The Daytona 500 is NASCAR's biggest race, the opening race to begin a tumultuous season, and while it has lost a bit of its prestige in recent years, it still is the best event you can win. And multiple drivers have won this race and immediately etched themselves into NASCAR legacy for the rest of their lives. Some drivers, such as Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt, and Darrell Waltrip, just to name a few, are some of the greatest drivers to ever race in the series that have won the biggest race. Some underdogs, such as Pete Hamilton, Trevor Bayne, and Ricky Stenhouse, just to name a few, are some of the biggest underdogs that managed to win the race. And while their careers aren't so memorable, they will always be put in NASCAR legacy because of their Daytona 500 win. While many drivers have already forged their legacy in the NASCAR record books, many of these drivers such as Rusty Wallace, Bobby Labonte, Ricky Rudd, Kyle Busch, and Tony Stewart never won a Daytona 500. And even though they're all NASCAR legends, especially in the Cup Series, winning the Daytona 500 is something else that you just can't really replicate. It's just that top tier, that final achievement to cap off a career. And while these drivers never did it, I'm going to tell you about one specific driver that not only won a Daytona 500, but actually won 2 Daytona 500s, and no one seems to talk about this guy. Heading into the 2003 NASCAR Winston Cup Series season, Matt Kenseth was going to enter his 4th full-time season in Cup Series competition. He was coming off a 5-win season in 2002 that saw him finish 8th in points and wanted to make a stab at the championship. And early on in 2003, that was prevalent, as after finishing 20th in the Daytona 500, he would rattle off 14 straight top 10 finishes, which included a win early on at Las Vegas. He racked off top 10 after top 10 for the entire season, and in one of the most dominant championship runs ever, he ended up clinching the championship a race early after finishing 4th at Rockingham, and coasted home 43rd at Homestead to win the championship by 90 points. Now with the championship in his pocket, now all he had to look for, all Matt Kenseth was now dying to get, was a Daytona 500. If he was able to find a Daytona 500 win somewhere, he would have everything he needed for a NASCAR legacy. With 7 career wins and a championship already to his name, Matt Kenseth was ready to embark on the journey to find a Daytona 500 win. And in 2004, it ultimately didn't come his way. Even though he was challenging for the win in the final laps, fuel mileage came into play and he wound up finishing 9th, which was actually his career best at the time, as he had only had one top 10 before in the race, being a 10th place finish in his rookie year in 2000. His year was decent. He would score 2 straight wins right after the Daytona 500, getting a win in the most recent Cup Series race at Rockingham in a nail-biter over Kasey Kahne, and holding off Kahne the week after at Las Vegas to win that race for the 2nd year in a row. But he only had 16 top 10s in 2004 compared to his previous year's 25, which only put him 8th in the standings as he made the inaugural chase for the Nextel Cup. Seeing how he was competitive in the year prior, Matt Kenseth looked to have a good Daytona 500 in 2005. Unfortunately, it would be bad, as he wouldn't even make it to lap 35 before his engine expired on his DeWalt Ford, and he would wind up being placed 42nd in the final order. 2005 would be a bad year for Kenseth, having barely any top 10s in the first half of the season and was in danger of missing the chase. Despite leading over 1,000 laps, the most he had ever led in a single season, he hadn't led more than 693 in any other season, he only managed to get 1 win at Bristol over then teammate Jeff Burton in a 2-lap shootout. This would help him get into the chase, where he wound up finishing 7th overall in the famous 2005 Roush chase, but his average finish that year barely even improved. It was a 15.4, and Kenseth was starting to lose his edge. He kind of needed something to bring him back to battle for championships, but as we are looking for right now, a Daytona 500 win. In 2006, Matt Kenseth was looking to avenge the bitter end he had in the Daytona 500 from the previous year, and that he did, leading multiple laps throughout the race on many different occasions and running up front for almost the entire event. And coming off a bad season the previous year, maybe this was a sign of a rebound for this season, that he could potentially battle for a 2nd Cup Series championship. But unfortunately, just after the halfway mark, he got into a scuffle with Tony Stewart that many fans found baffling.
Look out! Wow, I can't believe everybody missed that.
20 wrecked me, guys. The 20 wrecked me plain as day. How bad is it, man?
And there's Tony. Wow, man, well, it doesn't get more blatant than that.
And look at this, up across the track.
Kenseth was forced to start at the back on the ensuing restart, and he had to repair a bunch of damage on the left front of the car. He was able to salvage a 15th place finish, but he definitely could have won this race had he not been wrecked by Stewart, who ironically said during that week that someone was going to die at Daytona if people kept racing so aggressively. And wow, that's just wild that he said that and then does this. Fortunately for Kenseth, he would have a great season, winning again at California the next race for his 11th career win, and would score 4 total on the season, winning at Dover, Michigan, and Bristol to take the points lead heading into the chase. But unfortunately for him, he was hot and cold during the chase, and he wound up finishing second in the standings to Jimmy Johnson, who won his first championship. Once again, Matt Kenseth came into the Daytona 500 with fire in his eye. He knew he had a car that was good enough to win, and in 2007, he ran up front just like he did the year prior. Tony Stewart didn't get in his way this time. In fact, it was Kenseth himself that put his race-winning hopes in jeopardy as he caused a wreck with 5 to go by getting into his teammate Jamie McMurray, causing a red flag period. This allowed everyone to get their strategies together, and once they went into a green-white checkered, it was go time. Kevin Harvick was the one he was pushing on the outside lane, trying to get around the dominant Mark Martin, and as we say now, the rest is history.
If he's going to go.
Still single file.
White flag, 1 lap to go.
To the white, man. Coming to the white. Single file behind him.
Front 4, single foul. Here they go. They got to go. They got to get Mark moved. They got to move him somehow.
He gets back to that yellow line right around the bottom, all the way through turn 1 and 2.
Mark Martin is driving the race of his life, and there's nobody that's better at holding people off at Daytona.
And Kyle Busch lagged back a little bit. Is he going to get help? Is he going to come? He's looking.
Back behind you.
He almost squeezed Harvick into the wall, and here comes Harvick, the 29, with Matt Kenseth.
Oh, Mark got loose. Mark got loose.
And Harvick's getting a run off turn 4. It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag. Harvick. Kevin Harvick wins the Daytona 500. We got one car on his roof coming across the start-finish line.
Still wrecking. They're wrecking everywhere. Boyer's on fire. Jeff Gordon's wrecked.
And they are still wrecking. Montoya, Stremme, Kenseth, Biffle, Marlin, Carl Edwards, Casey Mears all crashed on the final lap.
Wow, you saw that, right? Not only was Matt Kenseth that close to getting his best career finish in the Daytona 500, he had a shot at the win. Who knows what could have happened in that final trioval. Kyle Busch hitting the apron just changed everything. In typical Matt Kenseth fashion, Kenseth would go out to win the second race at California for the second year in a row, and for the 4th time since 2002 that he won the second race of the season. He would have multiple top 5s and 10s throughout the regular season, including a race at Texas where he actually lost on a last lap pass to former teammate Jeff Burton. Kenseth was safely locked in the chase, but he did not win again, and that was troubling for him as it put him lower in the seed count. Unfortunately for him, his crew chief for his entire career, Robbie Reiser, would be promoted as general manager following the 2007 season. And Kenseth's results dipped once the chase began, crashing at Dover in the second race, finishing 35th, followed by another 35th at Kansas, 26th at Talladega, and another crash at Charlotte that left him 34th, effectively ended his bid for a second championship. He would rattle off 4 straight top 5s before the season finale at Homestead, where in his final race with Robbie Reiser, he would go out on top, winning in dominant fashion. And with that, finished 4th in the standings. But with Reiser leaving at crew chief, he was going to lose that valuable connection. And he hadn't even won a Daytona 500 yet, which is what he was looking for, of course, with the championship. Everyone wants to win a championship, but the Daytona 500, as I said before, is that last thing that everyone wants. It caps off the career. And Kenseth now was losing the potential person that he had the best chance to win it with. The Daytona 500 in 2008 would not go well for Kenseth, only leading one lap on the entire day and getting in a wreck with his teammate late in the race, which ended up putting him 36th, again leaving him with only 2 top 10 finishes in all the Daytona 500s that he's ran. And Kenseth in 2008 did not fare well. He ran hot and cold throughout the season. The main part where he was hot was in the summertime, but I think Kenseth just had a struggling time adapting to the new car. He won the last race with the Gen 4, but without Robbie Reiser and this new COT that he had to drive full time, he struggled. And when he got to the chase, again, wrecks at New Hampshire, Talladega, and Charlotte put him in a hole as he wound up finishing 11th in the standings for the first time outside the top 10 since 2001, and for the first time winless since said year. And it was not looking good for Matt Kenseth. With now the recession taking place in America, it was announced that DeWalt would not renew their sponsorship following the 2009 season due to the construction market not being so well, and now Kenseth not doing too hot as well. Kenseth would begin the 2009 Speed Week strong, winning the Budweiser Shootout, and even though he had to start all the way in the back of the Daytona 500 due to starting in a backup car, he knew his car was quick and ran conservative for most of the race. Running inside the top 5 and 10 and 15 for majority of the event was the norm for the 17 team, but he had a lot of speed and you can see it. And by the way, let me just point out, this is a sick paint scheme. I love this paint scheme. But anyway, talks were coming around later around the lap 100 mark that there were rain showers around the area and people had to watch out and the teams were possibly altering their strategies. But it all came to a screeching halt when people kept crashing all the time. Eventually, the rain was getting closer and closer and people were itching to get up front. Combined with a bunch of lap cars all over the place, it made everyone scrambled up. Elliott Sadler, who finished second in 2002, was looking to have an upset victory to get his 4th career win, and he looked to be a challenger as he was leading toward the end of the race. Eventually, Kenseth made a stab to try to pass him, but Jeff Burton and Paul Menard would end up crashing just before he got there. Eventually, once they went back green, Kenseth decided to go for the pass because time was running out.
The man that started back in 38th position. This is a backup car, but it's a car that's been to victory lane here during Speed Weeks. Won the Budweiser Shootout with that very car.
Elliott Sadler is challenged for the lead by Matt Kenseth and Kevin Harvick.
I believe these guys put a big old clock on their dash, and they wind her up, and it's supposed to hit midnight about the end of the race.
Now, if Matt Kenseth can bring them all the way back around and lead a lap. Oh, here we go.
There he goes.
Almirola goes off the nose of Casey Kane.
Hang on to her, brother.
Get break there.
Man, it gets crowded back there. Goodness.
Following this Eric Almirola spin, Matt Kenseth would go on to lead his only green flag lap of the 2009 Daytona 500, as during the caution laps he would lead a couple more under the yellow, but they would bring the red flag out for rain showers impacting the racetrack. And eventually, after a few minutes, the race was declared official, and Matt Kenseth would be crowned the 2009 Daytona 500 champion.
For the lead, and now the victory in the rain-shortened Daytona 500, and our Steve Burns is down there. Steve?
Well, Chris, Matt Kenseth wins the biggest race of them all. Matt, what does it mean to you as a racer from the time you were a child to win this race?
Oh, my goodness. It's going to be really wet out here. It's probably going to cry like a baby, but just really need to thank my team and thank the Lord for giving me this opportunity, first of all. And just had a lot of great opportunities in my life with my family and getting me into racing. And really DeWalt, Ford, Carhartt, USG Sheetrock, R&L Carriers, all the sponsors that we had that have stuck by us and made this happen in an up economy and a down economy. And man, I don't know, winning the Daytona 500 is definitely a G moment. It's just an unbelievable feeling.
Matt, you've won the championship, but what does winning this race mean to you?
I tell you what, after last year, winning a race means a lot to me. So it's really proud of these guys. It's Drew's first race as a Cup Crew Chief. That's pretty cool. And Chip for sticking in here with us and really going through the deal and trying to make the team stronger, putting egos aside and making the team as strong as we can. And these guys have been fired up and working hard, and it's just unbelievable.
Matt Kenseth followed up his 2009 Daytona 500 win by becoming the fourth driver in Cup Series history to win the second race of the season following the Daytona 500, coming at California for his third win there in 4 years. He followed it up with the last place finish at Las Vegas due to an engine failure. In fact, his only other DNF that year was also an engine failure at Kansas late in the season. He had a really bad early portion of the season, but rattling off a bunch of top 20s helped him get inside the top 12 in points, but a mediocre 25th place run at Richmond got him bumped out of the chase by Brian Vickers, missing the chase for the first time since its institution, leaving Jimmy Johnson as the only driver to make the chase in all the seasons it had been used at the time. Kenseth was hot and cold during the chase, even though he didn't make it, and he ended the season 14th in the standings, tied with his rookie season as the worst in his career. He ended the season, he had 2 wins, he had 7 top 5s, 12 top 10s, a pole, and he had an average finish of 15.4, a position increase from 2008, but it was bad. And of course, as I told you before, DeWalt left the 17 team following 2009. So after this amazing Daytona 500 performance, he finally had the crown. People could also say, well, he's not a real Daytona 500 champion. He only won it rain short. There was almost 50 laps remaining. And yeah, that's a very valid thing you could say. He probably could have not won that race, but he was blazing fast. So now, for all the doubters out there, he had to go find a way to win a Daytona 500, but from start to finish and not a rain shortened one. So I guess that new quest begins now. Although he was eager to repeat in the 2010 Daytona 500, Matt Kenseth didn't really show up in this race. In fact, the best he got was a front row seat to the thrilling finish between Jamie McMurray and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Although Kenseth wound up finishing 8th, which was his best finish outside of his win the previous year in his 11th try, he didn't rattle off a single win the entire 2010 season, and he started off the season great, scoring 3 top 5s and 6 top 10s in the first 7 races, but kind of just fell off a little bit, running 20th for most of the regular season. He did make the chase and had a good run there, scoring a best finish of 2nd at Texas with multiple top 10s with 15 total, and he wound up finishing 5th in the standings with a 12.8 average finish. The problem was Kenseth wasn't running up front. In 2008, he led 604 laps. In 2009, he led only 245, and he had 2 wins. In 2010, he only led 108 laps. Yikes, that's pretty bad. Matt Kenseth was blazing fast during speed weeks in 2011, but in the Daytona 500, looking for another win, after starting in 9th, he didn't even make it to lap 30 before problems came his way.
Together than most people park.
Yo, 200 miles an hour with somebody pushing.
Trouble turn 3.
Big wreck.
Brian Keselowski, David Rudiman, Michael Waltrip,
Big.
Matt Kenseth,
Big
and
wreck.
half the field.
I see about 3 of the Hendrick cars there that's involved.
Mark Martin is there. I see him. There's a Biffle. Jimmy Johnson's laying over there. There's a 24 car. Looks pretty bad. You think, well, there's not a whole lot to see. Michael just got into the back of the... Tony Stewart did the same thing to Michael in the Bud shootout. Got into him pretty hard and turned him around right there and got Michael with it.
And Darrell, everybody was going to the apron, but those cars sliding off 31 degrees of banking, that's where they're going to end up.
It's kind of an old saying down here. What goes down must come up. And you try to go around on the outside if you can.
Jimmy Johnson's 48 just barely got into the back of Matt Kenseth to do enough.
Kenseth's crew was able to repair the car and bring him back out on track, but the car wasn't as powerful as it was before, as he was running in the mid to high 20s for most of the remainder of the race. But he barely even made it past the halfway mark before he got into another issue, this time with teammate Greg Biffle. I don't know what's with Kenseth's random trend of getting into wrecks with teammates at Daytona, but this was another one, and it was mostly to his detriment, as this car was absolutely totaled as he wound up finishing in 34th. The 2011 season would go on to be a season of redemption for Kenseth, as at Texas he was finally able to conquer it, breaking a 76-race winless streak stretching back to California 2009 to get the victory. And another win soon followed at Dover after an inconsistent stretch, and had multiple good runs and easily made the chase. And this was his best chance to win a second championship, finishing 6th in the season opener of the chase at New Hampshire, 5th at Dover, 4th at Kansas, and a victory at Charlotte boosted his hopes tremendously to battle for his second championship. But unfortunately for him, he only was able to get two more top tens the rest of the chase and finished 18th or worse in the other three, as he wound up finishing fourth in the final championship standings with a grand total of 3 wins, 12 top fives, and 20 top tens for his best season since 2007. In 2011, Kenseth had an average finish of 12.2, but there was still a problem for him to deal with heading into 2012. Heading into 2012, many people were still putting the Mickey Mouse hat on Matt Kenseth's head. His Daytona 500 win in 2009 was rain shortened, so people could debate that, he would probably not have won it had the rain not hit at that perfect time. And just like the previous year, Kenseth looked fast in speed weeks, this time qualifying fourth, better than 2011. And this race would be absolutely insane. Heavy rain forced the race to start the day after at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And there was a big wreck within the first 5 laps, and you could tell this was going to be a big race. And Kenseth stayed in the big pack, opting to not go the car of tomorrow strategy where you get to just sit in the back the entire time. There weren't many cautions for wrecks for most of the first half, but once they got to the halfway part, everyone started going nuts. Kenseth ran around the top 15 for most of the day, and by lap 146, he finally had gotten to the lead after a restart. But eventually on lap 160, one of the most infamous events in motorsports happened.
Every time I got in the gas, the rear was like I could feel the rear really squeezing, and I got on the brakes, travel up, and while I was telling the spotter to have a look how the rear was moving, the car just turned right.
Juan, I also asked you talked to the gentleman who was in the jet dryer. He was in the ambulance with you as well, right?
Yeah, he was okay. He just looks pretty scared. Put it that way.
I don't know what the odds are that the car would just brake at that specific moment to smash into a jet dryer, but it happened. This would cause a red flag for 2 hours and 5 minutes, making this one of the longest races when you're watching it on TV as a program, I guess. But on lap 166, Kenseth would lead at the restart and would light his car on fire, telling basically all the doubters, go throw your Mickey Mouse hats away, because I'm a real Daytona 500 champion in your eyes, I guess, because he was able to maintain the lead for the last 38 laps and went on to win on a Tuesday morning race.
Those 2 cars in front of him if he gets back too far. But here we go. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen pretty quick.
We've seen where the timing of where you do it is so critical.
Those 2 cars, the 16 and the 88, should be able to get by, but Kenseth, if Biffle elects to take the chance.
Ford Chevrolet off the final corner. Matt Kenseth trying to win it for the second time. Here comes Junior to the outside. Side by side with Kenseth. He runs out of time. Matt Kenseth wins the Daytona 500.
I tip my hat.
I know Matt can't talk to you, but thanks to Jimmy.
2009.
I tip my hat to Greg Biffle, though. He could have jumped out of line, but he honored his teammate.
Matt Kenseth made a statement by winning the 2012 Daytona 500. He had finished second by pushing his teammate David Reagan in the 2011 Coke 0400 last July at the same track. But in this race, in front of one of the biggest crowds in the track's history, it was the second most people that watched the race on TV, only being beaten by 2006's edition of the race. This race helped Matt Kenseth show all the doubters that he's a real Daytona 500 champion, I guess in their eyes. He has 2 Daytona 500 wins now, and this one was the hardest one to get after so much struggle in the other Daytona 500 season ran, even dealing with the strife of being called not a real winner after winning in 2009. This helped him for the rest of the season. Even though mid-season it was announced that he would leave Roush at the end of the season, he was able to cap it off by getting an iconic win at Talladega during the chase and his 24th and final win with Roush at Kansas just 2 races later. as he wound up finishing 7th in points with a grand total of 3 wins, 13 top 5s, 19 top 10s, and an average finish of 11.1. Matt Kenseth would move to Joe Gibbs Racing for the 2013 season, and unfortunately for him, his second attempt at trying to win back-to-back Daytona 500s was foiled after nearly the entire Toyota camp had engine problems around the lap 150 mark, leaving him 37th. He would go on to have a 7-win season, for the most he ever had in his career, including winning the first 2 chase races at Chicagoland and New Hampshire, with the former actually being the first ever NASCAR race I ever saw on the internet as a child. He would go on to rattle off 7 more wins over the next 3 seasons, but unfortunately for him, he never had too many Daytona 500 moments. The closest he ever got to winning a 3rd Daytona 500 would come in 2016, where he was actually leading on the final lap, but unfortunately got loose and hit the wall trying to block teammate Denny Hamlin, and he wound up finishing 14th after dropping multiple spots in the final trial. In his final Daytona 500 in 2017, he would only make it to lap 103 before he would be involved in the big wreck, making him finish in 40th. He would go on to score his final win that season at Phoenix, finishing 7th in points, but he would never make another Daytona 500. He would go on to drive for Roush part-time in 2018 in their 6th car, and the final 32 races of 2020 with Chip Ganassi Racing after Kyle Larson said the gamer word. We have had many different Daytona 500 winners in the last 10 or so years, and some have been crazy winners, some have been people that absolutely deserved it. But Matt Kenseth doesn't get the recognition he deserves for winning Daytona 500s. He has 2 of them. Of course, the doubters can say he has 1 because rain shortened apparently doesn't count to them. But still, this is an incredible accomplishment, and nobody really gives him credit for it. Nobody remembers Matt Kenseth winning Daytona 500s. People remember when Kurt Busch won the Daytona 500, when Austin Dillon won the Daytona 500, when Jeff Gordon won the Daytona 500, when Kevin Harvick won it, so on and so forth. Matt Kenseth needs the recognition he deserves for winning these 2 amazing races. And his career, of course, we all know he's in the Hall of Fame now. But his biggest accomplishments, of course, include his 2003 championship, but winning the Daytona 500 twice, in 2009 and in 2012. I hope you guys like this video. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.